Just say this and he'll come back crying. There is a phrase that works like a silent spell on a man's heart. It is not a plea. It is not a threat. It is not dramatic. It's so simple that most women ignore its devastating power. But when uttered at the right time with the right energy, it unleashes something deep in the male psyche. An emptiness so unsettling that he can't ignore it. Why do some men who seem secure in their decision to leave come back completely transformed, vulnerable, almost desperate? What happens in his mind when you just disappear saying just a few words? The truth is disturbing. There is a psychological trigger that most people are unaware of, and when activated correctly, it completely reverses the emotional dynamic. It's not cheap manipulation. It's deep understanding of how human desire and perceived value works. Today you will find out exactly what to say, how to say it, and above all, what to do next. Get ready, because this goes against everything you've been taught about winning someone back. 1. His silence. When a man decides to leave, he leaves with a complete narrative in his head. He has already created all the justifications, all the reasons, all the excuses he needs to feel good about the decision. He expects crying, explosions, desperate messages, calls in the middle of the night. He mentally prepares himself to be the villain of the story, but at the same time, he expects you to confirm this version. What completely destroys this narrative is when none of this happens. When you just don't react the way he imagined. When there's no drama, there's no persecution, there's no attempt to convince you to stay. This creates a deafening emptiness in his mind. Human psychology works by patterns of expectation and reward. When someone acts expecting a specific reaction and that reaction doesn't come, the brain goes into a state of confusion. It's like preparing a speech for a discussion that never happens. All that mental energy is suspended, without destination, without resolution. Men tend to process breakups differently. They need confrontation to feel that the decision was important. They need to see the emotional impact to validate that the relationship meant something. When you withdraw that validation, when you refuse the role of the desperate stalker, something inside you starts to collapse. It's not about playing games or feigning coolness. It's about really understanding your own worth and not trading your worthiness for crumbs of attention. When you accept his departure without drama, you're communicating something powerful. Your life doesn't depend on his presence. This quiet acceptance works like a brutal mirror. He thought it was indispensable, that you would despair, that your life would fall apart. When none of this happens, he is forced to question everything. Wasn't he really that important? Has she overcome it yet? Is there anyone better in his place? The absence of reaction creates more noise than 1,000 words. The silence becomes a constant echo in his mind. Every day that passes without a message from you, without an attempt to contact you, without a sign of fragility, increases the internal pressure. He begins to realize that he has lost something that may not come back. And here's the secret. Men value what they need to achieve. When you're available, chasing, begging, the value plummets. When you just move on, the value skyrockets. It's basic emotional math, but few people have the courage to apply it. 2. The magic phrase. There is a combination of words that works as a direct portal to the male unconscious. It's not long, it's not far-fetched, it's not emotional. It's simple, straightforward, and devastatingly effective when used in the right context. The phrase is, "It's okay. I wish you happiness." It seems harmless, even kind, but the psychological impact is brutal. This phrase carries multiple layers of meaning that hit the male ego hard. First, you're accepting his decision without a fight. This already destabilizes him because he expected resistance. Second, you're turning your back emotionally, signaling that life goes on. Third, you're being too elegant for someone who expected drama. His brain processes this sentence and finds 0 attack points. There is no bitterness for him to defend himself. There is no accusation for him to justify. There is no despair for him to feel sorry for. It's a perfect chess move that leaves you with no counterattack. Men are programmed to respond to challenges and conflicts. When you remove the conflict completely, when you offer a clean and elegant way out, something inside of it starts screaming that this is wrong. The ease with which you have released it becomes a source of torment, The word happiness specifically carries immense weight. You're not wishing him to splinter. You're not being bitter. You're genuinely freeing him to seek something better. It puts you on a moral pedestal that he can't reach. While he's being selfish, you're being noble. This disparity corrodes from within. After this sentence, the only correct movement is absolute silence. No checking if he saw the message. No posting hints on social networks. No asking mutual friends. You said what you had to say and disappeared. This combination of final words followed by complete absence creates an unbearable emotional vacuum. In the first few days, he will feel relieved. You'll think you were lucky you made things easier. But as the days go by and you don't really show any sign of life, doubt begins to erode. Did she really move on that fast? Doesn't she care? Has she ever found someone else? The beauty of this phrase lies in its elegant ambiguity. You're not saying you're going to wait, but you're not being cruel either. It is simply closing a door with class. And classy closed doors have a strange magnetic power. They make people want to open them again to see what's left on the other side. If you want to understand why he reacts this way and turn this pain into emotional clarity, click the link in the first comment to discover the Jung method. 3. The fatal error. Most people make the same devastating mistake when someone decides to leave. They go into trading mode. They begin to list reasons to stay, promise changes, beg for another chance, remember good times. This seems logical on the surface, but it is the quickest way to bury any possibility of return. When you trade, you automatically put yourself in a lower position. It's communicating that your worth depends on their approval, that you're willing to put yourself down to keep someone who clearly doesn't want to stay. Men interpret this as desperation, and desperation is the opposite of attraction. Think of anything you've ever wanted a lot in life. When it was easily available, the desire diminished. When it was out of reach, the urge increased. This is the basic mechanics of human desire. By pursuing, you become too abundant, too available, too predictable. Another common mistake is to try to make him feel guilty. Send messages about how you're suffering, about how he's destroyed you, about how hard it's going to be to move on. The intention is to make him reconsider, but the effect is the opposite. No one wants to go back to someone who is shattered. People are attracted to energy, to life, to someone who is okay with themselves. There is also the mistake of maintaining casual contact. Send neutral messages, comment on social networks, pretend friendship. This may seem like a way to stay present in his life, but it's really just giving him the best of both worlds. The freedom to walk away without actually losing you. He can have his ego fed knowing that you are still there, but without the commitment to return. Posting indirect messages on social networks is another shot in the foot. Phrases about disappointment, about new beginnings, about fake people. He'll see, he'll know it's about him, but he'll only confirm in his head that you're bad, that you haven't gotten over it, that you're still emotionally stuck. This does not generate regret. It generates relief from having left. The most subtle mistake of all is not working on yourself during this time. To be paralyzed waiting for him to come back, frozen in time, living on memories and possibilities. When you don't evolve, don't change, don't grow, even if he comes back out of curiosity, he will find the same person he left. And that confirms that it was right to have left. The correction of all these errors requires a profound change of mentality. You need to really internalize that your value is not in being chosen by him. Its value exists independent of any relationship. When you operate from this truth, all right actions flow naturally. You don't chase because you don't have to. You don't beg because you're not desperate. You don't trade because you're not on sale. 4. Vanishing works best. Disappearing completely from someone's life has a psychological impact that few strategies can replicate. It's not about revenge or punishment. It's about creating a void that forces the other person to feel your absence of truth. As long as you're available in some way, he'll never experience the reality of having lost you. The human mind works with patterns of presence and absence. When someone has always been there and suddenly disappears, the brain goes into alert. He begins to search, to question, to miss. It is a survival mechanism that makes us value what may be lost forever. Disappearing doesn't just mean stopping texting. It means getting completely off his radar. No targeted stories, no showing up at places he frequents, no asking friends about him, no leaving any trace that you're thinking about him. It is a total and intentional blackout. In the first few days, he probably won't even notice properly. You'll be busy with your own life, enjoying the feeling of freedom, maybe even exploring other options. But there is a specific moment when the penny drops. When he wants to tell you something and realizes that he can't anymore. When something happens that would remind you and you're not there. When he goes to check your profile out of habit and doesn't find anything new. This moment of insight is crucial. It is when absence becomes real, palpable, undeniable. He is no longer in control of the situation. He can no longer decide to come back whenever he wants because you are clearly following another path. The door he thought would always be open begins to close. The psychology of scarcity is powerful. When something is scarce, the perceived value automatically increases. When you become scarce in his life, when his attention is no longer available, when your presence is no longer guaranteed, the value skyrockets. Suddenly you are no longer the option he left behind. You are the opportunity that is slipping away. There is a phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect that explains why unfinished tasks and unfinished situations keep hammering in our minds. When you disappear without giving prolonged explanations, without complete closure, his brain gets stuck in this loop. He can't file the relationship as over because he didn't have the emotional closure he expected. During this time of absence, something transformative needs to happen to you. It can't be faked absence while you're at home suffering and stalking profiles. It has to be real absence because you are genuinely investing in yourself, building a better life, becoming a stronger, fuller version of who you were. When you finally cross paths with him after weeks or months, he needs to find someone different. Not dramatically different, but noticeably better. More confident, lighter, more centered. This confirms what the absence was already suggesting. You've really moved on and you're better off without it. 5. Pretend to forget. Genuine indifference is one of the most powerful forces in the dynamics of human attraction. But there is an abysmal difference between feigning indifference and actually achieving this internal state. When you fake it, there are always cracks in the facade. When you actually get there, it's unwavering. Pretending to forget doesn't mean lying to him if you eventually cross paths. It means operating internally as if that chapter of your life had truly turned a page. It's when you stop checking your cell phone waiting for a message, stop interpreting each post from it, stop creating scenarios in your head about what he's doing or who he's with. The power of this is in the energy you carry. People sense when someone is feigning disinterest versus when they are not really interested. The energy of pretense is tense, controlled, forced. The energy of real indifference is light, relaxed, natural. And this difference is perceived subconsciously. Men have a keen radar for when they are being tested or manipulated. If you're obviously making drama of not calling, he'll notice and it loses all effect. But if you really don't care because you're busy building something better, it generates an involuntary magnetic effect. To achieve this state, you need to redirect all the energy you were spending thinking about it to other areas of life. New projects, new hobbies, new friendships, new goals. When your mind is genuinely occupied with things that excite you, there's no room left to ruminate about someone who has left. There is a psychological turning point that happens when you truly forget. It's when you realize that you've spent the whole day without thinking about him. When someone mentions their name and you take a second to connect with who they're talking about. When you see something that would remind you of them and you just don't feel anything anymore. This point of real indifference is paradoxically when he is most likely to return. Because that's when you've stopped emitting energy of need. Necessity repels. Abundance attracts. When you no longer need it to feel complete, when you are clearly fine alone, it creates an almost magnetic attraction. His mind begins to work against him. He thought you'd be devastated, counting down the days, waiting for him to come back. When you realize that you have really touched life, that you are happy, that maybe there is even someone else, panic sets in. Everything he took for granted is suddenly at real risk of never being available again. But be careful. You can't force this state. He cannot wake up one day and decide that he is now indifferent. It's a process that happens when you genuinely invest in yourself, when you rebuild your self-esteem, when you reconnect with your own dreams and goals that were put aside during the relationship. The irony is that when you finally reach that point of real indifference, you often don't even want it to come back, because you realize that you were attached to an idealized version, to a potential that never materialized, to a fear of being alone. And when you overcome these fears, the person loses power over you. 6. What goes through his head? The male mind processes breakups in a very specific way. Initially, there is a phase of relief. He feels free, without demands, without having to give satisfaction, without the problems that the relationship had. This phase can last for days or weeks, depending on the person. During this time, he is busy rediscovering the single life, going out with friends without having to tell them, doing what they want when they want, maybe even trying to meet other people. Everything seems exciting and new. The decision to end it seems to have been the right one. But there is a mental clock ticking that he does not consciously notice. Every day that passes without you showing a sign of life, a small seed of doubt is planted. It's not dramatic at first. It's subtle. A question here, a curiosity there. Is she okay? Have you met anyone? Why didn't you try to talk to me? The turning point begins when he realizes that you are really gone. It was not a dramatic disappearance of those who are suffering. It was a disappearance of those who moved on. This goes against everything he expected. He thought it would be unforgettable, that it would take you months or years to get over, that you would always have an open door in case he wanted to come back. When this illusion begins to crumble, his ego goes into crisis. Men build a lot of their own identity around being desired, being important, leaving marks. When you demonstrate that it was just a chapter that you turned over without looking back, it shakes the foundations. He starts stalking you on social media. He looks for signs that you are bad, that you are suffering, that you are still thinking about him. When it finds nothing or worse, when it finds evidence that you are well and happy, quiet despair sets in. Every photo of you smiling is a punch in the stomach of his ego. His mind goes into a review mode. He begins to remember the good times that he had conveniently forgotten when he decided to break up. That specific laugh of yours, that way you made coffee, that way you understood him without having to speak. Small things gain giant proportions in absence. There is also the comparison factor. If he has started to meet other people, he will inevitably compare it to you. And in most cases, new people will be in debt in some aspect. No one does things exactly as you used to. No one knows his quirks like you did. No one has the history that you have built. This comparison is brutal because he realizes that he was not running away from something bad. I was running away from commitment, vulnerability, fear of not being enough. And now that you're no longer available, he realizes that the problems weren't you, they were his. And he brought them along into this new life. Loneliness begins to hit differently. It is no longer the liberating solitude of the beginning. It is the loneliness of having lost something valuable. It's the loneliness of realizing that real connections aren't easy to find. It is the loneliness of realizing that pride and ego do not embrace you at night. At that point, he begins to test the waters. Maybe a strategic view on your status, maybe a like on an old photo, maybe an accidental message or a casual question to mutual friends. He's taking the temperature, trying to see if there's still a gap, if you'd open it. And here's the crucial test. If you respond desperately, if you demonstrate that you were waiting for this signal, all progress is destroyed instantly. But if you respond with distant politeness, as you would to any casual acquaintance, or better yet, if you don't respond at all, the impact on his mind is devastating. It confirms that he really lost you. 7. When he comes back regretful. There's a specific moment that happens when reality finally hits hard, when it realizes that you're no longer expecting, that you are no longer emotionally available, that the window he thought would always be open is closing, or has already closed. It is at this moment that regret hits with full force. He comes back different, no longer with the arrogance of those who think you will welcome him with open arms. He comes humble, vulnerable, even a little desperate. The messages change tone completely. They are no longer casual or test. They are confessions, apologies, admissions of error. He finally takes off the mask of the ego. What's happening internally with him is a complete restructuring of the narrative. All that story he had created to justify the breakup fell apart. He realizes that the flaws he attributed to you or the relationship were actually reflections of his own insecurities. He understands that he threw away something valuable out of pride, fear, immaturity. At that point, he'll do things he's never done before. You're going to open up emotionally in ways you avoided. He will make plans for the future that previously scared him. He will offer commitments that he previously refused, because now he is operating from the fear of real loss, no longer from the comfortable position of one who thinks he has all the options. But here's the critical part that most women get wrong. Just because he came back regretful doesn't mean you should accept it immediately. In fact, this is the moment of greatest power you have, and you need to use it intelligently. If you give in too quickly, you go back to the way you were before. He will realize that the risk of losing you was not real. You need to assess whether his regret is genuine or just fear of loss. Genuine repentance comes with real change. He doesn't just speak differently, he acts differently. He is willing to go to therapy if necessary. It recognizes specific patterns that need to change. He doesn't just want to go back, he wants to rebuild differently. Test for consistency. A beautiful conversation where he cries and promises the world is not enough. Observe if he maintains this energy in the following days, in the following weeks. Men can have powerful moments of awareness, but then go back to old patterns when they feel safe again. You need to see evidence of sustained transformation. Set clear boundaries. If you decide to give it another chance, it can't be as if nothing happened. There needs to be honest conversations about what caused the breakup, about what has changed, about what needs to be different. And above all, you need to make it clear that you will not tolerate the same behaviors that led to the end. Keep your life independent. A common mistake is to abandon everything you've built during the separate period as soon as it comes back. New hobbies, new friends, personal projects. All of this needs to continue, because that's what made you attractive again. That's what made you value yourself. And if you abandon it, you go back to the old dynamic. Notice how he treats you now versus how he treated you before. Does he value you more? Does it hear you better? Are you more emotionally present? Or did you just come back because his ego couldn't stand to see you leaving? This difference is key to deciding if it is really worth rebuilding or if it is better to keep the door closed. Remember, you don't have to take him back just because he came back repentant. You have every right to decide that you've moved on, that you've grown up, that you want something different now. Sometimes the greatest power is in saying no to someone who wants you, because you love yourself more.